Coming to you from the Windy City. Welcome to Let's Talk Shop, a podcast about all things cloud and enterprise tech. Listen to insights and guest interviews with IT thought leaders and professionals. Now, here's your host, Elias Kanaser.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Let's Talk Shop. I am bringing you some really cool guests, and this guest I have known for many, many years, and he's been around. Steve, I'm going to date you all the way back to the server-based computing and XenApp and the VDI days. But to do a proper introduction, it is my great pleasure to have a friend, a leading thought leader in the industry. Steve Kaplan is today the head of channels for Tessell. Steve, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Eli.
So
I was going to say I date back actually the OS2 days of Citrix, and even before that.
Good old days, right? The Ed Yakabuchi days. Those were the good days.
Yep.
So you're with Tessell. I don't know much about Tessell, so why don't we start? Tell me a little bit about what is, and am I pronouncing it right? Is it Tessell? Does it stand for anything?
Yeah, it's pronounced Tessell. It's short for tessellation.
Okay.
And tessellation is a tile overlay. It's commonly used in mathematics and computer science and art. M.C. Escher is a famous Dutch painter, kind of known as the godfather or the father of tessellation. He died in 1974. You've seen his paintings; they're very famous. In fact, when I first learned about Tessell over a year ago, I actually met with a collector of M.C. Escher. And I bought 4 original lithographs, which is kind of a misnomer. But anyway, 4 lithographs. And figuring that Tessell is going to become so well known in the IT industry that people will learn what tessellations are. They'll inevitably come across MC Escher, and the value of my paintings will skyrocket. So good ROI.
Hey, you're all about the ROI, right? I'm going to get back to that as we get into the conversation, because you had done a lot of work on ROI, and I'd love to see if you've done anything on Tessell. But tell me what it is. Like, what does Tessell do?
So Tessell is a multi-cloud database as a service, or DBaaS, and it lets people run their relational databases today: Oracle, SQL Server, MySQL, Postgres. Lets them run today in either Azure or AWS. More clouds are coming. More databases are coming quickly. I think first up is MongoDB. So it lets people run their databases as a managed service in public cloud. And because of that, they're able to dramatically cut down on database administration tasks, patching, cloning, upgrading, and so on, as well as all these other kind of higher level capabilities that Tessell brings, like automated data masking and policy-driven self-service data access. It lets people bring their own accounts if they want, their own tenancies. Tessell will manage their databases and their tenancies. So it brings all these kinds of data delight, efficiency, disaster recovery, replication, in multiple clouds. And really kind of, if you're familiar with AWS, I'm sure you are very familiar with AWS RDS, it's kind of along that model. But what Tessell does that's really cool is it utilizes a patented technology around using the compute shapes in AWS and Azure with a local NVMe. And normally that storage is ephemeral, meaning that if your VM rebooted or booted,
You lose it.
Yeah, you lose everything. Not ideal for databases. So that's Tessell's IP, is making that storage durable with guaranteed zero data loss. So now you can get literally millions of IOPS in AWS or Azure, but at a low fixed cost price. Tessell does not charge for increased IOPS. So it's extraordinarily, compelling value proposition.
So you kind of answered my question, but I want to double click a little bit on it. So it's not a database. It's a database. It's a managed service of existing databases on top of your cloud provider. You kind of took me there, but so why would I use Tessell if I can use RDS or I can go use Azure SQL? Why Tessell?
There are several reasons. RDS and a lot of the other DBASs do what's called as undifferentiated data management. So that's the patching and the cloning, the upgrades and so on, backups, which is all great, but it saves all kinds of time and money. But Tessell goes beyond that to differentiated data management. So again, including things like the ability to automatically distribute on a self-service basis, sanitize mass databases to UAT or to dev, the ability to curate at a really granular level. Our developers are provisioning 96 vCPU databases. It's killing us with our cloud bill. Let's limit them to 2 vCPUs. So just click. And our folks in Romania, we want them to see 4 weeks of backups, but we don't want them to be able to provision new clones. So click. So you can do all these kinds of amazingly simple and high-level cloud curation capabilities. Tessell also lets them, like I mentioned, run in their own tenancy. If you go to a cloud provider DBAS like AWS RDS, for example, great solution, but you now have to use their network. So you have to conform to their governance policies, their security policies. So you may have years of work that you can't use anymore. The ability of Tessell to let customers bring their own cloud accounts, call it data at your terms. Now they can use their existing security policies, their existing IT governance, and other capabilities too. The cloud provider DBASs typically don't let you do a native backup. You can do snapshots, but if, for example, you want to pull out of RDS, you're running Oracle, you can't. But with Tessell, we do snapshots as well, but you can also do native backups. And so at any time, you could go out of AWS or Azure and go to any cloud provider or back on premises. If you don't want to use Tessell anymore, you could just run natively. So it's got these kind of great flexibility options. If your software requires accessing the local drive or the root drive with the authorized permission, your users can do that through Tessell. You can do continuous backups so that, and then authorized users have their own capabilities to restore those backups. So if somebody needed to get to a database from Sunday morning at 1:03 p.m. in 7 seconds, they can go to there with just point and click and restore that entire database or clone it or do whatever they want to do with it. And Tessell is amazingly simple and intuitive. It even embraces this concept of consumer-like apps called data apps. So Availability Machine is the app that lets users restore down to the second or even the sub-second with Oracle databases. Dataflex is the app kind of for producers that lets them very easily, put in policies of who, what, when, where, how in terms of distributing access to databases. So it's really a whole new paradigm, a whole new way of approaching databases, and it's customers are loving it. We're seeing some massively large organizations embracing Tessell that normally would not even consider a small company of the size.
Let me ask you this. This is it's a crazy scenario, and probably a handful of customers, if any, are using something like this. But I'm curious to the capabilities. Can I stretch the database across multiple cloud providers? So instead of having, let's say, you're doing availability with an RDS, for example, it's on AWS and across AZs within AWS. But can I have high availability with Tessell using SQL Server or any other of the database that are supported with nodes that are on AWS and nodes that are on Azure, but it's the same database? So basically, HA across multiple clouds.
Yeah. Well, first, let me address one thing. In terms of, again, the cloud provider DBASs, they don't allow multi-region, just multi-AZ. So
Multi-AZ.
Tessell today allows multi-region.
Okay.
In terms of spanning across multiple clouds for active running of the databases, I'm not aware of that,
Okay.
even on the roadmap. But in terms of replicating cross cloud, that's absolutely on the roadmap. And I
So
think
tell me a
so.
little bit about the regions then. So the regions are typically not within synchronous replication. So that's an asynchronous replication. So that would be essentially the same use case for multi-region or multi-provider. You're still that's a replication, correct? Or can
Yes,
you do HA across the regions?
yeah, basically yes. Not real time HA, but very very close for disaster recovery.
Okay, so if I were to dig into your roots a little bit, I'm sure you've heard the conversations and the arguments of, everyone right now is in cost optimization. Everyone's putting a focus on their cloud spend. And, some people are making the case that they're going to get out of cloud. So in this environment, your company, Tessell, is bringing in another layer. How are you coping? How are you selling this to a customer? And I know you're a numbers guy, to where this makes sense. Like, you're adding something. So is their bill going to go up? Are you saving from somewhere else? Like, sell it to me.
No, it's a great question. And I'll give you an example. The first TCO I did for Tessell was with an organization. We were speaking with them for about 8 months, I think. They're running all of their databases, Oracle and others, in AWS, and very happy with it. But they're only able to do backups once a day using Commvault, and that's only on their production databases. The other databases less frequently, meaning that if there was a disaster, if a availability zone went down, or they got a virus, or a user made some terrible error, any number of things, they potentially could be down for 8 hours and lose up to 23 hours of data. And they wanted to go to RDS, but again, the inability to access the local drive was a deal killer. And there were some other things as well that were, that made it not a really great solution, but that was the deal killer. But anyway, the TCO show that with Tessell, they can move from unmanaged in cloud today to fully managed, and all the advantages that brings, and not only for the DBAs and the administrators, but even for the developers, because of the ability to spin up new clones on the spot means that there will be less conflicts and so on. So they get all the benefits of a fully managed service. Now they get true HA, one-click disaster recovery, and again, continuous backup all the time of all their databases. So they're getting all of that for less money than they're just spending today to run unmanaged in AWS. So yeah, that's the answer to your question. Is that
So when you're head to head with RDS or Azure SQL, you are less expensive, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, in this case, it was less expensive even than unmanaged. That won't always be the case, but in this case, it was. But it'll always be the case where we're less expensive than.
And this is in the managed services option or even in the customer deployment option? Because I noticed, I was browsing a little bit through the website. There are two options. There's the managed services where you're controlling the infrastructure and everything. And then you can deploy it inside of virtual machines. So in both cases?
In both cases.
Okay.
Yeah, the cost for the two is equivalent. It's really more a question of customer convenience and what they're trying to achieve.
So is the software, like, what is the control plane? Like, how do we know, how is the control plane highly available so that, yes, you're managing, you're offering a database as a service, but where does the control plane of Tessell live? Is that also distributed across multiple providers, or is it in one?
Today it's in one,
Okay.
but more will be coming. But
More.
within the one, you have the multi-region, backup and so on. And again, even in the very worst case, well, if it's in a customer's own tenancy, if for whatever reason they decided to get out of Tessell, they're just back running unmanaged is all.
So you just simply remove the management layer. But if there are any, well, I guess it wouldn't matter for any of the custom features. They would just lose access to those custom features. Okay. How do we know this company is going to be around? I mean, this company is essentially a startup. Who's back? Who's the VC? Who's backing it? How do we know it's going to be around in a year? Um,
Well, let me tell you my story first. When I
yeah.
left Nutanix, I started advising startups and took on 6 clients, and Tessell was one of the 6. And before joining Nutanix, I started and ran, sold a couple of businesses. So, I'm really, I had the luxury of kind of doing what I wanted to do, and not really looking to go back to work full time for anybody. But I think all 6 companies are great, and they actually all have a chance of hitting uniform status. But man, Tessell is just something else. When you come across an organization that brings such extraordinarily easily identifiable value to an existing space, plus adding in all the simplicity, I just got to believe it's going to be very successful. And I know Lightspeed Ventures, who's backing them. Lightspeed is one of the world's largest VCs and one of the most prestigious. They're backing them. The founding and senior partner of Lightspeed is on Tessell's board and is a personal advisor to the CEO. And they've funded everything, $34 million to start. And their belief in Tessell is so high as well. That makes me feel great. That validates my belief that this company is going to be extraordinary. So anyway, I went back to work full time. I just couldn't resist the opportunity.
That's awesome. You're talking, and I can't stop thinking of acquisition, and I don't know why, but this just came to mind. I feel like Oracle Cloud could benefit. Maybe could be interesting. I don't know. I'm gonna throw it out there. I'm gonna make a prediction. You never know.
Tessell is a great Oracle partner. I don't know that Oracle necessarily looks at us that way yet, but they will.
The key word. Yet's the key word.
Well, the thing that's really exciting about Tessell from an Oracle standpoint is last July, the CEOs of Oracle and Microsoft jointly announced basically it's called Oracle Database Services for Microsoft Azure. And what it allows Azure customers to do is to run their Oracle databases in OCI using this connector, and which is great. It's a great option, but not everybody wants to run as big as multi-cloud is, and I'm a huge believer in it. Not everybody wants to run their applications separate from their databases.
Sure.
And so what Tessell lets customers do is move their Oracle to Azure and run them now with millions of IOPS and all the other advantages that Tessell brings and so on. So they can happily stay with Oracle. They don't need to migrate off of Oracle, and they can do it all in native Azure. So this is made Microsoft actually quite excited about Tessell as well, and we're doing a lot of work with them and getting some very nice introductions into organizations that are interested in moving their Oracle databases to Azure.
Very cool. So I'm going to ask you this question that feel free not to answer, because I can understand that this could be kind of roadmap and maybe you don't want to talk a lot about it. But again, I think it's interesting. So AI is all the hype right now. Generative AI in particular, the chat GPTs of the world, etc. And I've got to think that there's something on Tessell's roadmap in terms of AI operations, let's call them, so that I don't necessarily have to configure all of these things, but simply say what I want, or something with AI that Tessell is maybe thinking about. Is there anything you can share? Can you tell me if it's roadmap? What do you think?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot going on with AI. The one area that I personally know about is, let's go back to data masking. Today, a lot of data breaches out there. In fact, I think almost all the data breaches come from secondary environments.
Yep.
The backups, the clones of the production databases for test or UAT or so on. because people just don't pay as much attention to that. So with Tessell, you can automatically mask that data using scripts. So you eliminate that threat of a breach, because if they then get into the backup, the data is meaningless to them. But the AI portion, now what Tessell will be able to do is actually identify what that sensitive data is based upon, of course, different criteria, and then automatically mask it using the best masking scheme for that data for that organization. So that's an immediate, great use case coming for AI.
Very cool. I feel like what we're seeing today with AI is going to be significantly different than what we're going to see in the next 6 months or even in the next 12 months. I think there's going to be just leaps in terms of capabilities, in terms of all of these tools, these clouds that are going to embed these AI capabilities. So it's going to be a very different world, 6 or 12 months from now, in terms of how all of these things are using AI. So I hope, I hope it'll be exciting. I'm not looking forward to a Skynet, but properly used, let's just call it that way. What did I miss about Tessell that folks should be aware of? Is there anything that I didn't ask, or anything that you find that is an additional differentiator? You talked a lot about it, but did I miss anything?
You had asked some great questions. I don't think really that you've missed anything off the top. I guess the only, just an observation I have, being in the IT industry for a long, long time, Citrix kind of being the first big product we evangelized. And back in those days, people probably didn't realize this, but we used to have PC administrators, and got a little bit of pushback. They didn't have a lot of power in organizations typically, so not a huge deal. VMware came along, and now you got to some server administrators that did have some more clout. I remember in 2005, the biggest objection we would get is some application administrator saying, "You will never put my production server into a virtual machine."
I've got some stories on that for you too.
Sure. So we got past that. Then we get to Nutanix, and now we get to the storage administrators, and those guys really have some more clout. So we had to make a case that, look, you guys are talented and smart. You're not going to be carving lens anymore, or expanding volumes or so on, but you can do all this stuff that actually is beneficial to the organization. So now you get to data. I mean, data is the lifeblood of organizations, and most people don't understand databases very well. So you're relying on this core group of DBAs, and these are very smart people and very capable, but a lot of them have been in their jobs 20, 30 years, and they know it really well. And so one of the challenges that we have, and that our channel partners have, and so on, is making the case for them. Look, things are going to change. Tessell's automating this all today, but other people will catch up eventually. Sure. From that perspective. And what we're offering you the opportunity is to transition from a DBA to a data engineer. And again, instead of doing these manual tasks of the cloning and the patching and the backups, things that are not very fun and not very rewarding, to now be able to use this data in exciting ways and really help the organization excel, and then obviously help their own career as well. But it's another sales pitch. It's pretty easy to go to the CIO and say, "Hey, we can give you 10 times the performance at half the cost of your existing database provider." That's an easy sell. But then we got to go to the DBA architectural team and also then sell them. Yeah. So that's kind of a challenge, I think, that we're working on and making great progress with, wanting to align though with data administrators and help them transition to data experts.
Steve, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I can spend another 2 hours talking about this. I'm a data geek, so I love this type of stuff. But I'm going to put links to Tessell, to your LinkedIn profile. All of that's going to be in the show notes for folks that are interested, that want to reach out to Steve, that want to see a demo potentially. I would love to see a demo at some point. Maybe I'll take that offline and we could set that up. I'd love to see kind of how it is. And maybe we could do something else where, we can do another show, but we'll show how it works, like give it an actual demonstration. Maybe there'll be a part 2 or a follow-up to this. We'll see what folks say in the comments, and we'll go from there. But at the end, thank you so much for making time. This was super informative, and you'll have to come back again in the next, let's say, 6 months, see where you guys are at that point.
Sounds great. Thank you, Eli.
You bet. Take care now.
Take care.